Perfect. Thank you. Welcome. Good morning. Bienvenidos. Welcome to Long Beach, California. Welcome to the Century Villages at Cabrillo. I want to take a second to thank Steve Coleman, who's the ED, and Brian Diaria for having us here today. Let's give them a round of applause for hosting us. I'm also very grateful to have several members of the legislature who are here. You will soon hear from the great Assemblywoman Susan Eggman from the city of Stockton is here. Our colleague and my neighbor, Senator Isidore Hall from Compton is here. Assemblywoman Autumn Burke from Inglewood, and Senator Miguel Santiago from Boyle Heights, sitting right there next to my parents. You know exactly where to be. And our great mayor for the city of Long Beach, Robert Garcia. Oh, there he is. Thank you, Mayor, for being here today. I'm very grateful to share this moment with my parents and my family who are here today. Thank you for being here, Mom and Dad. They're right here in the front. And I think my brother and my niece are here somewhere. Oh, they're back there. Thank you for being here. And so I want to also just take a second to acknowledge my entire staff who's here today, my chief of staff, Erika Contreras, and in particular, my legislative director, Lawrence Cooper, for working tirelessly on this important bill. Thank you, Lawrence, wherever you are. I'm sure you're working somewhere. This bill, oh, there you are. Hey, Lawrence. Lawrence, this is truly your victory today, so thank you for all your work. To the governor's staff, thank you for working with us throughout the year to make this a reality. The negotiations were not easy by any means, but together we were able to get to this day. Thank you again to all of governor's staff for their help. SB 1383 began in Paris in the UN COP21 climate change last December. It was a wonderful experience to attend the summit with our governor and the California delegation to share with the world our bold vision to address climate change. It was there that this bill was unveiled with its ambitious targets. I attended a session of the United Nations Climate and Clean Air Coalition with Governor Brown, where he opened the dialogue and discussion with the most powerful countries in the world on how our state plan to tackle super pollutants. I'm very proud that the goals established by this bill to reduce emissions of super pollutants continue California's global leadership on climate policy and truly marks the next chapter in our fight to protect our planet and human life. But my motivation in pursuing these goals comes from a much closer place, comes from my district in the 33rd Senate District. Yes, climate change is bad for polar bears and penguins, and we must do everything to protect them. However, the impacts of climate change, pollution, and air quality are having a devastating impact on the lives of children growing up right here in our own backyard. Growing up in southeast Los Angeles in the shadow of the 710 freeway, playing with friends in the rail yards, it's a region identified by the U.S. Federal Air Quality Standards as one of the worst in the entire nation. Like many other mothers in my community, my mom doesn't know much about the Kyoto Protocols or the United Nations Climate Change Conference, but they all know about child asthma rates. They know the day of the week we have to shut our windows and play inside because of the odor coming from the county incinerator in nearby Vernon. They understand the impacts on their children of chronic health problems caused by poor air quality as a result of heavy industry and choking congestion transportation corridors in the region. Ask the parents of children here in Los Angeles County or in the Central Valley or in the Inland Empire about the debilitating effects of asthma on their children. Ask them to tell you about the missed day schools and hospital visits, the results of asthma that now afflict 1 in 10 kids in LA County and 1 in 4 black children. The super pollutants addressed by this bill, black carbon, methane, and HFC gases are powerful climate forcers that have a profound effect on climate change and global warming. But they also have serious detrimental effects on public health. This bill represents a unique opportunity to balance our global vision for the future with a much more local and immediate impact. We will cut statewide emission of black carbon by 2030. With clean, low, and zero emission vehicles, We can reduce diesel smoke from transportation corridors like the 710 freeway behind us. We will reduce methane emissions 40%, reducing organic waste in landfills, and working with our dairy industry to reduce emissions from cows and manure. And we will remain on the cutting edge of HFC gases as the world embraces global standards under the Montreal Protocol to phase down these powerful climate forcers. With these bold and ambitious goals, we will continue to set the standard for climate policy worldwide. And most importantly, these changes will be felt right here in California and reflected in the health in our children and future generations of Californians. Hoy realmente marca un día histórico en California. La historia de este proyecto de ley comenzó en París, en la cumbre del clima de ONU COP21 del diciembre pasado. Estoy muy orgulloso que los objetivos establecidos en este proyecto de ley para reducir las emisiones de supercontaminantes siguen el liderazgo global de California sobre la política climática. Los supercontaminantes referidos en este proyecto de ley, carbono negro, metano y gases HFC, son potentes invasores climáticos que tienen un profundo efecto sobre el cambio climático y el calentamiento global. Pero también tienen graves efectos perjudiciales sobre la salud pública. Este proyecto de ley representa una oportunidad única para equilibrar nuestra visión global del futuro con una perspectiva mucho más local e inmediata. Con estos objetivos ambiciosos, vamos a seguir estableciendo las pautas para la política sobre el clima en todo el mundo. Y más importante, estos cambios se harán sentir aquí en California y se reflejarán en la salud de nuestros hijos, y le agradecemos también a las futuras generaciones de californianos que siguen en esta lucha. Again, thank you, Governor, for your leadership, for being a steward for our environment and our diverse communities. I now would like to invite the great Assemblywoman from the city of Stockton, who played an integral role with our dairy industries to getting us to a point where we are today, where we can finally work on targets to reduce our methane in California. She's a staunch supporter of the environment, our working families, and truly is a leader in our Central Valley. Please help me welcome Assemblywoman Susan Talamantes Eggman from Stockton.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my honor to be here today. I wasn't able to go on the trip to Paris, but I heard a lot about it, and some of the policies that came back from there, I think, are truly earth-shattering, and I think we'll see the benefits of that as we go forward. And while we're down here in Long Beach and we know the pollution that exists from the industries that exist down here, we also know up in my area, you can drive by a dairy, you can drive by a lot of farming areas, and you know that there's pollutants going on, but how are you able to address those things is very different. And how you're able to actually bring the industry to the table is a worthwhile and I think we can see a very productive process if we can actually engage together. This bill and the deliberative process it underwent, I think, stands as an example of what can be accomplished in a legislature where members seek to represent all communities and where we work to ensure that we don't accomplish one goal by undermining another. And for that, I credit my colleague, Senator Ricardo Lara, as well as Governor Jerry Brown, both of whom listen to the concerns of those of us who represent farm-dependent economies. Dairy is the first or second biggest contributor to the economic output of San Joaquin County, and depending on the season, it's also a difficult sector where farmers contend with a rigid pricing structure that they have nothing to do with, and also wildly fluctuating cost of seeds. So asking them to do something about cow manure is, I mean, people will laugh at you. And at the legislature also, when at the last day we're talking about regulating farts and manure, and it makes people like, what are you people doing? But when you actually stop to explain to people what it's actually doing, and that we're actually going to have some help doing it, it makes it a lot easier to go down. Anaerobic digesters are what we're talking about to help with this process. With the goals of 1383 cost millions of dollars, and as not what people think, there are not millions of dollars just lying around on dairies in California. The $50 million dedicated to be able to help dairies as linked to this bill will go a long way to lowering emissions and keeping dairy healthy in the state of California. It also builds this two-way process for adopting and implementing regulations and ensuring that dairy has a voice in its own future. I love soy milk, but I really love real California milk and real California cheese too. If we can prove, and I think this is an important point, if we can prove here in California that farming and environmental stewardship really are compatible, then there is no excuse for any other state where farming is not nearly as productive and as high quality as we have it here to continue to lag behind. This bill is a part of that, proving that these goals are compatible when we take the time to work together, and that farming is not necessarily in conflict with protecting the environment. We can all do it if we take the time to really craft thoughtful legislation where we work together. It is now my privilege to introduce the person who focuses on the science of all of this. We do our jobs to try to represent our constituents as well as pass laws, but it really takes a scientist doing that background work to put us on that right path. And it's now my great honor to introduce Professor Ram from UC San Diego, right down the road here from Paris to San Diego to Long Beach today. Now, next we'll get him up to San Joaquin County to visit a dairy. Doctor?
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman Eggman. It's, of course, as a scientist working on this problem for the last 43 years, it's a great privilege and a great day for science and for the planet. So through SB 1383, California has thrown a lifeline to its people, us, and to the rest of the planet, 7 billion. For example, if these policies, SB 1383, are implemented worldwide, we have shown that will cut the projected warming, reduce the projected warming by as much as 50%. In addition to saving millions of lives lost to air pollution, saving as much as 100 million tons of crops. We talked about agriculture. It'll have a huge impact on improving yield. In addition to slowing down dangerous climate feedbacks, which we see happening. I'll mention one or two examples of that. I also want to mention, thanks to the California Air Resource Board, we have our commissioner here, and to tremendous amount of science done in California and rest of the world, SB 1383 is based on the best science. Just to give you one example of hundreds I can give, last year, 50 researchers from all 10 University of California campuses, we organized under the Carbon Neutrality Initiative of President Janet Napolitano, and we released a report called Bending the Curve. How do you bend down the emissions curve? And we identified black carbon, which is basically the dark stuff which comes out of diesel trucks, HFCs we use as refrigerants, and methane. You know, if you cut these separate pollutions in addition to CO2 is what we recommended. So let me just come back to why do I call this a lifeline? My own work, I'm going to cite, but it's consistent with the rest of the scientists who are saying the same thing. In another 15 years, we are going to see 1.5 degrees warming. The planet has already warmed by 1 degree. It took it 100 years to do that. The next 50% will come in the next 15 years. And we will reach 2-degree warming Celsius in another 35 years. For those of you used to Fahrenheit, just to multiply whatever I say by a factor of 2. So 2-degree warming is about 3.8 degrees Fahrenheit. What does that mean? Many bad things are going to happen very, very soon. So please don't get fooled into thinking climate change is for 100 years from now. So when we reach the 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, and sustain it, this is business as usual, sustain it, it's likely we are going to see 6 feet sea level rise this century. And much, much more if we sustain it beyond this century. So this policy 1383 is going to save not only our families, our children's families, our grandchildren families, and generations yet to be born. So I want to give you one example of what are the disturbing things we are seeing. We all know about the droughts, the fires, the floods which happened in the East Coast, severe heat waves in India and Pakistan, so on and so forth. But when I say feedback, it's basically you push someone, they push you back harder. Just north of this region, starting from Oregon, the Pacific Ocean, sea ice is retreating. We measured over the last 20 years, the retreating sea ice let more sunlight come into the ocean, heating the ocean enormously. How enormous is that? That's equivalent to the amount of increased heating of the ocean just in the last 20 years is equivalent to putting out 250 billion tons of carbon dioxide. What does 250 billion tons mean? California's emission is about less than 500 million tons. So that's how huge nature is pushing back. There are many such things happening. So the good news is we can slow all of this by cutting down these super pollutants, black carbon, methane, HFCs. So what do we mean by super pollutant? Cutting down 1 ton of diesel emission, diesel black carbon emission, will have the same cooling effect as cutting down 2,000 tons of carbon dioxide. So I want to tell our distinguished legislators and the governor, you are throwing a huge lifeline for the rest of the planet. So I would like to, suggest that our governor and numerous California legislators, including Senator Lara and Assemblyman Eggman, we should think of them as champions of the earth. Likewise, the technologies and the innovations which California is going to put into place to implement this policy is going to serve as living laboratories for the rest of the world. And it's up to all of us to make sure this living laboratory message is heard over the whole planet, including at the United Nations this week, at Marrakesh, in COP22, and beyond. So with that, it's my great honor to introduce my personal hero and champion of the earth, our own Governor Jerry Brown.
So glad to be here with all of you. This is an important day. As you just heard from the scientist, this is serious stuff. The fact that it may be a little complicated doesn't mean the impact isn't devastating and clear on the lungs of little children and elderly people right here in Long Beach and California. That's what we're doing today. We're protecting people's lungs, their health, by cutting out the poisonous chemical that comes out of diesel trucks, that comes out of many sources in what is known as black carbon. That's real stuff. And it goes from some machine into the air and into your lungs. And tens of thousands of people in America die because of this prematurely. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions, die around the world. So that's the health effect. This is really real. It affects poor people the most because they're closer to the polluting sources. Very, very important. But beyond that, you have this whole challenge of climate change. I know we've got people running for president who say there's no such thing. Well, even though he's standing a few hundred feet away from the rising sea of Miami, Florida, it is real. And it's very hard to deal with something down the road. You know, when Noah wanted to build his ark, most of the people laughed at him. Why are you building this damn ark? Well, lucky he did, because that saved all the species and Noah and his family. Well, we got to build our ark too by stopping climate change, by stopping dangerous pollutants, and doing it as soon as possible. And by the way, when you do it, contrary to what some of these companies tell us, I won't tell you which companies, they say, oh, that's going to slow the economy. Just the opposite. It's going to foster incredible innovation. And the technology that will be built for our dairy farms and will be built by cars and other kinds of business will be technology like the Apple phone and all the rest of it is picked up by the whole world. It all comes in California. You know, whether it's Google, the software, the hardware, Intel, Apple, all the rest of them. This is going to happen by pioneering a low-carbon fuel, by pioneering ways of avoiding the poison of black carbon and methane and fluorocarbons. We build the economy, we create the jobs, we protect our future, and we make ourselves all healthy. Make sense? And that's why I'm going to sign the bill without any more talk. Thanks.
So I need to come see you sometime.
Whenever you got
to
time.
Talk air quality.
Whenever you've got time.
You do a great job.
Okay, good. Yes.
How are you?
Nice to see you. Good.
Good to be here. Oh, well, huh?
Good job.